amended the Woolman bill to Karen Robbins.
Is that the one dated December 10th?
It is.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion. Take this.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
On the question.
On the question, Madam President, is this, this is dated up until November 27th. Would it be fair to say that this is probably the last of all encompassing bills that are out there? There's nothing else out there?
We haven't gotten anything since this one.
Well, maybe I should rephrase that. Is there any other telephone conferences or things of that nature that we're about to be billed for, or should be billed for in the near future?
Yeah, there may be.
I figure no one probably calls it December. It's Christmas. This is January, so it would be minimal.
I spoke to him about the meeting that the majority of members wanted to have last week. I wasn't comfortable with it, so yes, I called him.
But there isn't substantial billing.
I don't believe there is, no.
And on this bill, I see where, he did charge us to receive and review detailed email regarding correction and need for signed closed session resolution.
Which page you?
September 13th. See, the one above that says receipt and review treasurer's report, but then he has his NC for no charge. So he will review things and then many times not charge us.
Well,
That's several times in this, at least 4 or 5 times, where he has reviewed things and not charged us.
Almost 2 hours. Actually, it is over 2 hours he has charges. At an hour and 3/4.
No, actually, it's more than 2 hours.
And then I'm just confused. Maybe it's because sitting home for a while, or maybe my SpongeBob Band-Aid that my 6-year-old grandson put on me to make me feel better. I don't know. But I'm reading here on October 25th, 2012, review emails, notes for meeting, including closed session resolution. And I would, respectfully submit, in order to maximize the dollars that you have, if we can minimize paying the attorney to review emails and closed session resolutions. I remember having a thought process before where there are only so many reasons to go into closed session, period. So if you had those reasons, I think there's 4. And if you had a resolution for each of those 4 things and put them in the secretary's or the treasurer's or the president's folder, you would never have to ask an attorney to review or prepare a closed session resolution.
If I'm not mistaken, Joe, this was the issue, I can't remember what the subject matter was. You wanted something put on the agenda for open session, and you insisted that it be discussed in open. I thought it should be discussed in closed, and I called Ron.
And for that, he charged you a half hour a time?
2 cents. It's not half hour.
October 25th.
Oh, you're on another one now.
I don't have the recall to tell you the specifics of what we discussed that day.
Well, Madam President, with all due respect, that's the problem when you get bills that are 3 and 4 months old. It's not just your recall, it's most
We got
people's
this
recall.
bill last month. You wanted copies, you didn't want to approve it until you had copies. And I made,
Yeah, I think it's prudent for anyone spending the money to be able to look over a bill. It's just not your recall or
we
anybody
will
else's.
take it.
It's just very hard.
So the question is, you don't want to pay that bill?
No, it's not saying that.
Or is it you just feeling that we shouldn't be talking to the lawyer as much?
Well, we already had that conversation. I'm just wondering
That's
what...
basically what you're saying again, isn't it?
I'm going to vote to pay the bill because you got to pay the man's bill, but at the same time, the board needs to take some advice for what it's worth and stop calling the lawyer so much.
Joe,
Or keep calling them, and then the dollars in reserve will end faster.
Joe, you've been saying this probably for the last 10 meetings in a row.
Yep.
We got the point. I got the point. And there are times I would suspect that, especially what we're talking about here, without a recap of what it's about, that it was necessary. And I'm assuming that it had to do with some difference of opinions between somebody on the board here.
Manager Sunstein, with all due respect, when we were meeting twice a month, all you had to do was wait 2 weeks and get your answer. Unless it was extremely pressing.
Well, if you want to bring up, now we're going to bring up the 2 weeks.
No, I think the
No,
motion's on the floor to pay the bill.
Yeah, okay.
If
Well,
it's
let's
not,
just-
I'll make
let's
a
just do
motion to
that.
pay the
No,
bill.
it was made second.
Made second?
We're just
Okay.
on the question.
just so you know, I just added up, how much does he get paid an hour? 90?
$85.
85? I added it up and it looks like maybe for September 13th, because he put no charge down at the it seems like that other .5 that you see above that last line for the 13th, it seems like those weren't charged as well. I could be mistaken, but, I mean, I'm playing with the math here, and it seems like that's not included in the bill. So I'm thinking that maybe there was no charge for all 3 items on that date.
Just a quick response, Madam President. I mean, if we go through each and every one, we'll have a story for each and every one. A news story could be a follow-up letter to Kevin Applegate at the DEP. I'm glad we're following up, but this is something the President can do, or the Secretary, or someone. Could do the same thing without charging the board almost half an hour, 4/10 of an hour. And, you know, that's how things add up. You gotta watch those pennies. So, that's all. We have to pay the bill. I thank you for letting me talk about it. And they can call the vote.
Anything else on the question? All in favor of paying the bill from Visavinis?
Fine.
Opposed? Okay. Motion
Transfer.
passes. Now we need a motion to transfer money.
I make a motion to transfer 1,900 from the money market into the board checking account.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Madam President, as a quick follow-up to that, does the board have any concerns or maybe interest in just having a, forgive me, gentleman's agreement with the managers not to call or try to get this bill up? We don't have much money left. I hate to see our last hour go into the attorney's fees.
Well, we're going to be discussing the attorney later.
It's only a
And, you know, Joe, without knowing what might come up, I don't know how we can do that.
The only answer, Madam President, respectfully, I would have, I'm not going to be here, but reach out to a senior manager and ask and see how it can be done. We've done this before when 5 or 6 weeks went by and you needed help to write a letter to the city. And I did it, and I brought it over to your house, got it signed. I've got it here for you tonight, you know, the original. So I think the board's got to reach out and not make the attorney such a viable member of this board because he's getting paid. We're not.
Joe, I don't think anybody on this board wants to pay out ridiculous or non-essential funds to anybody, much less the attorney. We've had this attorney for how long now? 12 years? Maybe even longer than that. So, and you can see he doesn't charge, and he doesn't charge when he doesn't think it's necessary. You're just advising. So your warning is basically not founded. I think everybody in this board understands where our problems are and what our problem is. And you've been saying this every meeting for the last 10, 12 meetings that I can think of, and twice a month. I think we got the point, Joe. Thank you.
Okay.
Are we under correspondence, Madam President?
Beg your pardon?
Are we under correspondence?
Do you have something?
Yes, here's the copy of the letter that was sent. You might want to make this, I'd like to read it and make it part of the record. The original is on the top, Madam President, with your signatures. The rest of them are copies. One on the top, we'll give that to Mary, that's the original. And with your permission, I'd like to read it into the record real quickly.
Which
Wait a
the
minute, let
original
everybody
did
get their
not
copy,
go
sure.
to, you didn't give the original to the mayor?
There was two, you remember? We made two.
Oh.
To pass them down so everybody can go along with what it reads.
Okay, Dear Mayor, Fazone, and council members, this is dated December 20th, 2012. The Board of Island Managers would like to ask you to extend the current lease between the Board of Island Managers and the city. We would like to receive a 5-year extension, but we are agreeable to whatever extension you are comfortable with. As you know, the city is entitled to a 25% share in earnings from the entire island under the conditions of the lease. If, however, the lease is not renewed, the 25% share of earnings would no longer be available to the city for the benefit of its citizens. I am sure that everyone understands that when the island is developed, thousands of people will come to Burlington and will support the business district as well as the island. We believe that a healthy business district can be realized by a balanced development of Burlington Island. Our lease with the city is about to end. We need your help. The board fully understands the present economic conditions and the difficulty in developing an island with no infrastructure in place. Investors are hesitant to invest, but we believe that extending the lease is the best way to bring development to our town. Will you help us continue the effort to make Burlington a better place to live and work? We appreciate your support in the past and hope that you continue to be part of our effort to make Burlington Island a recreation destination. Sincerely, Mary Worth, President of the Board of Island Managers.
Okay, thank you. Okey-doke.
May I ask, Madam President, if
Yes.
we're on that, have you heard from anyone at all? from the city?
No. So, not having heard from anyone, I can only surmise that the city was not interested in extending the lease. I have heard nothing from anyone.
Well, they should at least do it by letter.
Well, they
like
should.
we did.
They should.
Joe, was it mailed December 20th
I-
there or on the
I
mail?
hand carried
Actually,
it.
he hand-delivered it
Oh,
to
you
City Hall.
hand-delivered it?
Yeah,
So it's been nearly a month.
Yeah.
yes, I drafted the letter, brought it to Mary, she signed it, and I went right over there, and she requested me to get somebody to sign that they got it. That's who got it. Just as a follow-up to that letter, if the city doesn't contact you, perhaps in a month, we should send a follow-up letter.
You have such a letter?
No,
No, you're asking.
He's asking.
Okay, I
We
understand.
think
you know, just to follow up, saying we wrote to you on December 20th, we have yet to hear from you.
At what point do we stop sending letters? That's the next question. I don't think they're going to respond to that
Well,
either.
they should at least respond
I'm
and
not
say
arguing,
no.
that's
You know what I
not
mean?
the argument. We know that.
That would be the professional thing.
Well, of course it would.
And I don't think it's a bad idea to send a follow-up letter. But at some point, just going to get silence, I'm sure.
Or should we reach out with a phone call?
Who you going to call?
The mayor.
That's either way. I mean,
You know, short of a letter, Madam President, I think the only other thing is we at one time had representatives of the board going to council meetings. I would stand up in the public and indicate that we had written a letter, and were waiting for an answer, and what's the status of it.
is that the council or to the mayor?
I would stand up at the council meeting. From
Council.
what I've seen, sometimes the mayor's not there.
That's exactly right.
So,
No, the mayor's not there most of the time.
And
but
it's
the
a council
administration
meeting, not
is.
a mayor,
So,
got to go to the administration.
well, it was addressed to council members as well. So
They were CC'd. Joe, they were CC'd on this?
I imagine they gave it to him. I don't know what
Well, he only
administration.
gave them one copy of the letter, so we don't know whether the
So they
council
probably did,
members got letters.
they probably did.
We don't know, but I think a follow-up is in order, especially given the timeline for finances and everything.
Okay.
I would suggest that we call not only Dave Ballard and the mayor, but also the head of council, involved.
Make sure she's aware of it.
That's
She may not be
exactly-
aware that this letter was sent.
That's exactly my thought. And let her respond to see if she can dig into it.
Okay. Alrighty. Moving on to negotiations committee. Do you want to take that, Joe, or not?
Madam President, I'll pass on that, because I think that negotiations committee ended in August.
Okay.
So, does that mean that there's no more negotiations?
But it hasn't been.
No, I'm asking Joe.
Have I been
No,
negotiating?
well, has it been disbanded? Is that that's the question.
We asked them to stay on.
We had a committee, I was chairman of it.
Yeah, I know.
And then at our August meeting, there was a document which basically ended the negotiations. So
But what was it?
no need
How
for a
was it
negotiating committee.
How was it ended? It wasn't really ended. It was never carried through. by the law.
Negotiations committee was meeting with Woolman.
Right.
The document presented at that August meeting basically said you failed to perform according to these dates, and therefore it's over.
Is that true? Or is that when,
That's up
is
to
that when December.
No,
she was,
we
gave her an extension and never responded?
we had a meeting before the August 31st deadline, and we agreed to extend that deadline to December 31st.
Very clear.
There were conditions listed in that, to which Karen agreed at that meeting, okay, and said there would be no problem complying with those conditions. We went ahead and amended the motion, and we passed it. And it was at some point after that that Karen came back and said, no, we're not going to do that. So she said, we're not going to give you the money. We're not going to, we can't do what we said we could do. And, but no, the board actually extended her to December 31st. And it was only later, that she came that she came back and said that, she wasn't going to comply with the,
So any negotiations ended
Well,
December 31st?
Well,
There's
next
been no
question, that's the question.
negotiations
Is
then.
the negotiating committee a viable committee or not? Is it ended, over, done, or?
To be honest, brutally frank with you,
Absolutely.
when we had lunch together and nothing was mentioned about this communication, and I was chairman of the negotiating committee, trying to find ways to make this work, nothing was said until hours later at the meeting when the document surfaced. I felt powers of the committee or the chairman were basically diminished and blown away, so why waste my time?
and Joe, we have
Well,
discussed that
yeah, well-
on several occasions since then. That was not the intention. I was waiting for a callback with some advice in this regard before I said anything to anyone. And it was not a slight on you, it was not a slight on Murray, it wasn't a slight on anyone. I was waiting to get a callback. I have explained this to you on at least a half a dozen occasions. If you can't accept that, I don't know what to say. But the fact is, we amended the motion at that meeting. I believe it was the 24th or the 26th of August. We amended it unanimously at that meeting that night. And it was at, I don't know, a meeting or two or three later that Karen came back and said she wasn't going to give us any money. She wasn't going to be able to get done what she said she could get done. And that was it.
in fairness, I believe what she said was the $5,000 that you wanted was difficult to come by when her investors were not even allowed on the island. When they had people visiting from the Netherlands that were prepared to go there and make a commitment once they seen the property, they were not allowed by the mayor's decree. And when you looked at the lease agreement, and I brought it with me for anybody who wants to see it, it says that the lease with us, we're supposed to have access to that island.
If I may,
They violated the lease.
if I may, Joe, you know.
I can just continue.
Go ahead.
So the lease says you're supposed to have access to the island. The city stopped it. You said, let's go extend the agreement with Karen and the Woman Group, and she's got to come up with $5,000 to go into an escrow account, pay for legal fees and legal review. And I'm not so sure about that the request for proposal, excuse me, I'm not so sure that the request for proposal requires monies to be put down for legal review. But that's a whole different issue. Yeah, it was just such a difficult environment. I've been a businessman all my life, and I know how to try to overcome some things, but I have to share with you that the difficulty to try to overcome objections, to come up with funding to visit and develop an island you're not allowed on. You get letters to the city, and they have amnesia to us. You know, this is an unbelievable effort for people, unbelievable effort that the public should be aware of. 25% of the revenue of that island, which is millions of dollars in potential, is being lost because the city doesn't want to even listen to us talk. I apologize. I should have more patience. I was just sharing my thoughts. I apologize.
If I may, Madam President? Sure. Joe, this has been going for 5 years. We have yet to see a nickel. I have yet to see a valid or a real investor come before this board with the warming. So to say that the city is going to get 20, I've been saying this has all been a smoke and mirrors for 5 years. I have always said, I have no problem. I went along with Karen with it. We've been pressured into it. We've been given optimism. When does it end? And then it comes to this. You've got the $5,000 that she agreed to, whether it's legal, not legal, whether she need to or not, she agreed to it. You've been in business for a long time. When people make an agreement, you would want them to stick to it. There's also monies due to the attorney. Not a great deal of money, $600 and some odd, I believe it is. She doesn't want to pay that either. So at what point do we stop this? We had a negotiating committee, which I was involved with for a while. Mary Worth was involved with it for a while. Jim was involved with it probably from the beginning. There was a pro bono attorney brought in. There was a whole conversation about that. There was talks about, there was nothing accomplished. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of meetings, but nothing was ever accomplished or brought forward.
That's not exactly true.
Well, it may not be exactly true. Nothing is
4 or 5 least.
Hey, hold it. You had your chance. I didn't interrupt you, so please don't interrupt.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's not a problem. And nothing is entirely 100% true. I mean, unless I have the books in front of us, or the lease, or the time that I can show you all the numbers. We went through these numbers that they're based on what? It was an assumption. And you wanted to give somebody a lease or turn the island over to somebody in the beginning for 70 years, and it went down to 20 years, and with nothing to back it up. I have no problem with a real bona fide investor. I never saw one. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of I can do, I will, a possibility. I met a few of them in the very, very beginning 3-4 years ago. That didn't pan out. When does it end? And we have spent, we're broke. Yeah, 5 years we're broke. All this money went for these negotiations and everything else. We could have ended this thing. Well, we did at one time, what, 4 years ago, to put a new RFP out. And Joe, you've said it a couple of times. Don't accuse me of saying that they're the only game in town, but then at the end of the situation, what did you say? They're the only game in town. But what is the game? There is no game. So I apologize for letting go also, but, and then, you know, it's going to come up next probably, and I got a phone call from the newspaper in Bristol. And the first thing I've been told was that Mr. Cipriano and yourself are not going to run come the next election because the majority of the board has put obstacles in front of the development that we won't go along with, I don't know with what. So I find that a little bit of obtuse too. Because basically, you want to put it on us. You were a president, and so was Joe during this period of time. So you were a majority, and nothing got done either, so to speak. Okay? And that's not exactly 100% true, was it, Joe? Maybe 80%, maybe 75%, I don't know, maybe even 50%. But I'm tired of this conversation that gets nowhere. We just keep repeating it, and you wanted to repeat it twice a month. We're down to once a month. I abstained because I was so annoyed last time when this came up that I don't know what you've accomplished. You're not going to be here, so why do you care? And Jim now is not going to be here, so I don't know what his complaint is. All right, I've kind of relieved myself of this. I've been sitting on it for months, so that's all I got to say.
At present, one point, there were at least 5, as Manager Caruso suggested, and I have every reason to believe, 6 drafts of a lease agreement that came out of that negotiating committee.
First of
So
all,
something did get done.
no, yeah, but it got done, you know,
And
first
we
of all,
were right
first of
at
all,
the edge of finishing it.
well, no, we weren't. No, we weren't. It wasn't even close.
No,
It
we
never
weren't.
got to
You
our
can't
lawyer.
finish it without any money.
It never even got to our lawyer, and in the beginning, it got transferred from the Wallman Group having their own attorneys do a lease to us somehow doing the lease. And that's where a lot of this money went also.
Talking about
The cost
the costs and
of the legal fees, of Brian going over these
recommendations
these
of
negotiations.
That happened
Garrett
once,
or
and we put
something.
an end to that.
Oh.
And it happened at the request of the board that they be sent to Ron.
Do you want to go over
And
the
then
last 5
the
years?
pro bono attorney said, let's wait until we finish. What a great
Do
idea.
you want to go over the last 5 years worth of bills that were attached to the Wallman Group?
No, it's fine. The records will stand for itself, and my 20 years that I've been on the board, I'm happy to have served, and I can look back and
That's great.
feel good that,
Yeah.
I left it a little bit better. People can vote now in hours that weren't available before. We've got a code of ethics. We've got a couple good things. The only thing that went away was the volunteers that used to come to our meetings, as well as the enthusiasm, which has been shot in the head. Other than that, I remember in the last election, somebody said, well, Mike Zalot never did anything in 30 years. Well, what echoes in my mind is, what have you done? Question begs to be asked. I mean, we're in 9 months in this
continue.
administration without an agenda.
All right,
Where
Joe.
is it?
Joe,
I
let's
don't know.
continue with the meeting. Continuing with what this is all about, basically, I had asked Joe to address this, and I'll pretty much just read from my email.
What are we addressing?
The negotiation.
The negotiations with Woolman. There was an article in the Bucks local paper early this week that indicated that that quoted Karen as having said that the board and Woolman are actively seeking developers as a team. While the board is aware that Woolman hasn't given up its search, it must make it known for legal reasons that the board is neither involved in that search nor obligated to Woolman in any way since January 6th. On January 6th, this lease expired. The city, with the city, in spite of Woolman's hard work, the city elected not to respond to our request for an extension of the lease. And we can only interpret that as meaning that they are not interested in giving us an extension. The city demonstrated through its unwillingness to address our request that it has no intention of extending the lease for any length of time. As a result, the board's obligation to Woolman has expired, and the conditions specified in the RFP no longer exist. Now, this is not to say that, if Woolman wants to continue to research other ways to make, to develop the island, they are certainly welcome to do so. But by virtue of the fact that part of, the conditions of the RFP no longer exist, we cannot continue to do this. And the bottom line is, Don, that Woolman has no money. It hasn't had any money in 5 years, and we cannot go on negotiating as though they're ready to write a check. We have gone through draft after draft of a lease agreement without having seen so much as anything put in deposit. Woolman's attorney's fees for reviewing the lease drafts have gone beyond what they have demonstrated a willingness to pay, and the board cannot cover it. So, formally, as a result of this RFP, this is over. We can't go on indefinitely, and that is not to say that, Woolman can't continue to pursue this, should they decide to do so.
Madam President.
Jim?
Yes, ma'am. I think that we should not get excited over something that over a newspaper article written without our authority or without our agreement, or whatever terminology you want to use. A newspaper person can write whatever a newspaper person wants to write. It's amazing to me that the Woolman Group and their representatives even want to come to a meeting after being treated and talked about as they have been talked about in the last number of months. I don't think we should do anything to divorce ourselves with the only entity in the world at this point in time. Excuse me, I need my blood pressure medication. With the only entity at this point in time that is showing any interest in helping us to develop the island. We should divorce ourselves from City Council, who never responds to anything that we ask them. They don't have the courtesy. They don't have the courtesy to meet with us. One of the biggest reasons that I am not running for re-election in this board is because of the lack of the cooperation from the city. Cooperation would be nice. Enthusiasm would be wonderful. Okay? So I think if we're, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'll be finished in 5 seconds here. If we're going to berate anybody, we should berate City Council and their lack of help and enthusiasm, not the Woolman Group.
Thank you.
I'm not berating the Woolman Group, but Jim, it's over. The term.
Okay, it's over. So it's over.
It's not over.
The time.
It's not over.
It's not over.
It's
The
not.
fat lady ain't sung yet, Mary.
That's exactly right. And you
Fat
guys,
lady has not
you
sung
don't look
yet.
that fat to me, and you don't look a lady from this point of view. But the point is that no one's stopping you from going out there and trying to find a developer. Doesn't mean that we aren't a little upset, if I am, after 5 years of nothing happening. We've got a hand raised over here.
Hold on a minute, Joe. We are unable to continue with this because basically the terms of the RFP no longer exist. So for legal reasons, Don, we don't have the money to put out another RFP.
So extend them. Extend them for these people that did what huge people should be doing.
What are we extending? What do you want extended?
These are the only people.
What do you want extended,
Let me
Don?
tell you right now, you got 4 people sitting there right now that worked for the last 5 years.
No one's stopping them.
Saved this for
No one's stopping
In the
them, Don.
meantime, you people sit on your hands, you walk out of this meeting, and you do nothing except badmouth these people, you kiss the
We're not-
mayor's butt, and that's why the
That's
reason this
nonsense.
island and this city's in a project is
Okay,
exactly where it is today.
all right, Don, sit down for a minute. You know, you're not a public portion, and I apologize for letting you get up there and do this, but no one's stopping her from doing anything, or the Walton Group from doing anything. We're just saying that it is no longer, we don't have a lease, we don't have an agreement. That's basically what this is all
Don't
about.
have the legal wherewithal to
We
do
don't,
that.
they can do whatever they want. They want to bring something to us. Look, there has been brought up in this meeting many times, by me anyway, that they could have accomplished this a long time ago. All they had to do was, instead of wanting the island for 20 years, go on a commission basis and go out and be our representatives, which is basically what they're supposed to be.
You people should be ashamed of yourselves.
Okay, I'm ashamed of
No,
myself.
I'm telling you, here's the reason why. I've been working on that island for 6 years now.
Yes, you
I
have.
put in almost 300 hours a year on that island.
Yes, you
How
do.
many hours do you people put in? When you walk out of this meeting, how many hours do you devote for this board and for saving the city and this project? I bet you don't, you might put in 1 or 2 hours and all of a sudden, it's a big problem. I've got so many hours.
Hey, Don.
I have a life to
Hey,
live.
Don, hey,
So do
Don,
I.
hey, Don, this is not a competition, and I can tell you I've got a lot more hours than 300 in.
You should, you've been on the board for
Well,
the
thank
last
you.
25 years.
I appreciate that. And I'm not going to get into a who shot John and bang with you, and bang heads with you. Why? What's the point? You're angry, I understand. You don't think I'm a happy dude? I'm not.
It's a very
You
frustrating
people
thing.
you created this situation, and that's why it's the way it is. And that's why we see people sitting here right now that have the attitude that there's a problem here.
All right, Joe wants to
Okay.
talk. Joe wants to
Joe,
One point in the question. The point is, even without legal standing, even without a lease, and even against all odds, I think there was a movie with that, against all odds, the woman group still stands tall and wants to do what they can to help Burlington.
No one's stopping.
that's wonderful.
What must accompany that is some level of cooperation and enthusiasm. Something.
What does that mean, Joe?
And what you're hearing,
Well, wait, I understand about Don.
well, I'm not going to.
I want to know what enthusiasm, what do you want me to do and be enthusiastic?
I'm not going to get into the question
Why not?
and answer because I'd like the
But you're making,
respect to let me finish my statement.
no, because the accusation is that we're not doing anything to support anybody.
Let me finish.
No, he's been doing this for months.
It doesn't matter, he still has the floor, you gotta let him finish.
So, I commend them in against all odds for wanting to do that. And then my question is, when you look at the article, very little about Woolman. What I'm interested in is this mythical $1 million deal. Interested in the fact that to date, unless you'd be so kind to share later in the meeting, that someone has contacted the DEP about the dredge spoils. I'm interested that's been reported in here. The fact that they recently dumped, according to this article, in the Palmyra Cove in an emergency situation. And I think it is necessary in somewhat of a reflection of the frustration that our best island worker has shared, is that nobody's doing anything. This is Manager Cipriano asked at the last meeting, the past 6 meetings that went by, what's gotten done? And manager's President Worth's answer was, well, I guess nothing. And as we sit here tonight, I'll bet you there's not been a phone call for the DEP or to the Green Acres, and we know it hasn't been called to the mayor, so.
You're talking to the
you know,
reporter, or
this
you're talking about somebody else?
This report touches very little on the Woolman Group, but touches a lot on things that the manager should be concerned about.
Do you know
What's
where the
this
$1 million, you don't know where that $1 million deal came from?
What's the hell no, I
You
don't know where
don't?
the $1 million.
How about two and a half years ago when the guy came in from what was the name of the
I
guy?
can't remember the name.
From
Yes,
Fidelis.
Fidelis.
You don't recall that?
He's the one.
That wasn't a proposal, that was just a discussion.
Yeah, well, supposedly, wait a minute, let me tell you, I spoke to the reporter, and I was told that she was given a letter that had that information in it.
She wasn't gonna tell you.
And
did
she
she?
wouldn't tell us who wrote it.
Well, my recall may be somewhat dimmed, but not altogether. And it says in here that we're going to denude the densely wooded area?
Who said that? I don't know who said that. I know that, but whoever
Who
she
said that?
got the information from,
I can tell
she
you
wouldn't tell me.
that I would fight that, and I'm sure there'd be some
Well,
folks.
I sent you an email on the bottom of it with, hey, I sent you an email that had that article, and I told you on the bottom that there's a place to respond to the reporter. Do we want to respond?
Yes.
I got no response to that.
I think,
Well, he is now.
I think what the interest here is the fact, not so much for a report about $1 million deal and it being partially summed, as quoted here, for a 10-year lease. The issue here is the other facts reported by the reporter about the DEP that are not being addressed. That's the issues we should be talking about.
She's been trying to get a hold of the city. Did you talk to the reporter?
I think I did.
Yeah, I think you did too.
Yes.
Did you ask any questions?
That's not the question that this board should be doing for DEP.
Joe, I would venture to say, if I read that article too, and I can pull a lot out of that article that I'm not going to discuss. Some of it I have discussed here now, but a lot of it is just pointing fingers or creating some kind of vision that is not real. Now, the reporter wanted information, and that's why she called me. I explained the $1 million deal is a bunch of nonsense. It's over 2 years ago. I don't know what the other thing you complained about or what you were concerned about there. But I don't know. All of this has been out in the wind in different times, in different places, and somebody tried to pull this all together to probably create some kind of annoyance or anger or agitation. I don't really know. Well, that's...
And you think you're done with that?
No, that's all part and parcel.
It's all part of that?
The Bristol order.
Okay, are we finished with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the elections. Mary Ann, would you like to,
Sure. All right. First thing that has to happen is the 3 ads need to go into the Burlington County Times. I have a copy of those. Anybody wants to see them? The election falls on April 1st this year.
I have a question. Have these been sent to the attorney yet for approval? Because that is a step that is
I did send it to
mandatory,
him,
just so
only-
everyone knows.
I did send it to him. He said that he did not need to approve them.
No. Now, see, I was told
But I did
last
send
year
it.
the dates and the information in the
He's
ads have
looking
to,
them over anyway, but,
yeah. Well, I believe he reviewed them last year, no charge, so.
yeah.
What is the date these have to be advertised by? Can you tell us that?
The notice of the mail-in ballot and the military service has to be in by February 5th. The notice to candidates, which is why I want to get it in immediately so that there's more time before that deadline, which the deadline on that petition is, for the nomination petitions is February 8th.
February 8th, it has to be in the paper for...
For people who want to know.
February 5th for the mail-in and the military service.
Okay.
There is no date for the notice to candidates, but that's actually the first thing that needs to happen.
And when do the candidates have to have their petition in?
February 8th,
That's when the petition has to be in, okay.
right, which is why I want to put it in tomorrow.
okay. Joe?
Madam President, if we're going to put something in the newspaper, one thing that stands out in my mind is the need for us to declare Manager Carnival's seat as vacant
That's all.
It's all on the agenda, Joe.
on the agenda.
Closed session. I see it under closed. 14B.
Well, when you come out of closed, you're going to have to take action on that
That's exactly true.
particular document then.
Correct.
Okay, and I guess I'm not going to get a copy, or that's in closed session.
What's that?
Copy of Manager Cornwall's resignation.
I don't have any copy.
He never sent us a hard copy, and we've been discussing this, so I said last time that I put it on the agenda
Closed session.
to discuss. All right,
Madam President?
yes,
May
Jim.
I make a suggestion? Regarding the election, I know our solicitor reviewed the documents last year, and to save the board some money, I think that the person responsible for the election should contact the county election board, see if there's any changes in the election law or processes this year, and if there hasn't been, then just take last year's documents, substitute the dates, and advertise them, and save the board some legal fees. Manager Caruso and Apravo last year did an excellent job with all the documents, and they conformed, and they were researched, and once we ascertain that no laws have changed, no provisions have changed, then we can do it ourselves by just substituting the dates.
Well, if
Let
I
me ask
may,
you, Jim, would you be object if Ron decides he could do it pro bono?
Never turn.
If our solicitor does it for free, I'm okay with that.
He didn't charge us last year.
I don't believe he did, and the only thing that has to be reviewed by him anyway is the 3 initial ads, because they have to be run again 3 weeks prior to the election, but they don't change in between. So they only have to be reviewed once, and if I'm not mistaken, he did do that last year at no charge.
Them ads have to be run twice.
They were ran twice last year as well, 3 weeks prior to the election and at the end of January. And she has my election book from last year, all the contact information is in it. Everybody in the county that she needs to talk to, everybody at the state level, every step she has to take. So the only thing he had to really review was the ads before they're placed.
Joe?
If I can ask Mary Ann, what's our balance in the treasury after you pay off? What have we paid?
26, almost 27.
And say it's $2,700. If memory serves me right, an election's going to cost about $700.
About $773 it was last year.
That includes the workers, and that's just the ads.
That includes everything, poll books, workers, ads. Because you have to pay for the poll books too.
I have a call in on the price for the poll book.
Did you get the price, did it go up?
She hasn't called me back.
Oh, okay.
She wasn't in.
Madam President, the only other issue I have, if we don't discuss Manager Carnival's position until after the closed session, I'm so sorry, after the public portion, and we've got a date of February the 8th, a couple weeks, how's the public going to know what positions, if there's 3 or 4 positions open?
Well,
It's going to be out.
This is the entire public out here?
And that's going to go when?
She said she wanted to get it in tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
This week.
Okay, it'll be in tomorrow.
She wants to get it in.
Okay. And,
So there's 4
you
positions
know,
that will be open?
Board manager.
I'm just a little
3 years.
confused. Is that something that qualifies for closed session?
Yes, it's a personnel issue.
Why does it make a difference?
Just trying to be transparent as possible, especially in light of
It's
the
a
fact,
personnel issue, it
You
does
don't
not
think everybody
qualify
out
for
there
open
doesn't already
session.
know?
well, especially in light of the fact that when Manager Scattergood resigned, he resigned by via email.
That's right. So did Mr. Cornwall, I believe.
The difference is the timeline.
Well,
That's okay.
that may be true too.
Yep.
Okay. The Open Public Records Act, Tony?
oh, was she finished with the
I have
election?
one,
Oh,
There's
sorry.
there
a
is
lot.
one issue.
Okay.
We follow these school board elections for the deadlines and how many days you have in between things and when they have to get done. The drawing of the ballot positions, needs to be done before or on the 7th working day following the last day for the filing of petitions, which brings it to February 19th. Our meeting in February is the 28th.
You're saying, Mary Ann, if I may, that the meeting for drawing
For the drawing, the lottery drawing of the
Needs
order.
to be earlier because of the deadlines than when our next meeting is.
What if we,
what day of the week is that?
That is a
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, February 19th.
does it have to be on that day?
Before or on the 7th working day. That's the 7th working day. So you can go,
All right, so what is the Thursday before that? What if we, what if we did a special meeting to do that?
So we don't have two meetings anymore.
Yes, in that meeting.
Thursday before is
Gotta
the
pay that
14th.
price. That was a great move.
To move the meeting for that month to then?
I don't care. It's not, when I make a.
Do we have a motion?
Case out of it.
Hold on a minute. I don't ever remember the drawing of ballot decisions being a time thing.
I don't either, we just did it at a meeting.
It's taken from the school board election timing, which is
Right,
what
but I
Ron
mean, I
said.
don't think that's ever been in the past, we just drew them at a meeting. I don't think there was
You're
ever
saying
a
election
date.
law
Well, it's
says it has to be
possible.
by day.
They say you run it similar to the school board. You went off the school board with that, right?
As far as how many days,
And
yeah.
that may not be correct. Now, that's something that Ron should answer for free.
Ron sent me that.
Ron told you that that's what it is? I don't
When
remember.
I said,
Madam President, the only other thing you can do is if you've got the cooperation of city council, they meet on a Tuesday, that's the Tuesday night, ask them if they could be so inclined to have that activity as part of their meeting.
What, pull the names out of the hat?
And you save the cost of advertisement and having another meeting.
I guess,
Is that
yeah, because
Frederick?
somebody
Well,
else,
it's a public meeting.
it's just like we take somebody out of the public to draw the names out of the hat. We're basically doing it.
Well, you're doing it at a public meeting.
Right.
Okay, well, all right, I could speak with someone about that, but we should decide tonight whether we're going to change the date of the meeting in February in the event that they won't do it. That city council won't do it.
You just paid to advertise your meetings.
I'll pay for the ad, Joe. I've paid for a hell of a lot since I've been on this board. I don't mind paying for the ad. So what we need to do is decide whether or not to change the meeting to the 19th for February, in the event that I am unsuccessful in getting city council to agree to this.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
On the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And we know for a fact that that can be done, so if there's not a challenge in the election. I would make a phone call, Joe. We should know for sure that we can do that, so that there's not somebody challenging the election because the city council.
So she said that Ron gave it to her.
Yeah, but he didn't say that you could go to a
He
city
didn't say we
council
could go to a
meeting
city
and
council
have
meeting.
names out of that. You
No,
know
well,
what I'm saying?
that's,
That should be a question we could ask him without him charging.
I would hope so.
I'm sure of that.
As an alternative to having an advertised meeting for the purpose of complying with the statute that he indicated we must follow, ask him if we can still meet the letter of the law by pulling the names out of the public meeting to be held at a advertised city council meeting. If he says yes, then someone has to request the city to allow that to happen, then it takes a little bit of time. I don't think they would.
Should only take a phone call to the president of the city.
I'll call Marie tomorrow.
I have two more things.
Okay.
I have two more forms. One's a notice of election, just so you can Yeah. I wanna make sure I get this stuff in prior, and then that's the sample ballot. I don't know how many people are going to run, so I tried to go with the maximum to make sure it fit. There's 2 on the sheet.
I see what yeah. That looks pretty good. Would you decrease the font or the margins?
Margins. Didn't want it to get too small.
Yeah.
This is just, so this could change from 3 managers for 3, okay, she's got it.
Yeah, she's got it all covered.
One treasurer. Is this pretty much blueprinted off of last year's ballot? Basically.
Yeah, I just had to add positions and try to fit them in because there was more.
But if there's only gonna be, well,
It'll be 3 years, 1 year,
oh, yeah,
and
okay.
treasurer.
Okay. So you'll have room because you got 5 spots, but, yeah.
Tried to put the maximum just in case.
Okay.
Hopefully you don't want
And
to
of
get
course, it'll,
smaller.
of course, it'll, at the time, it'll be whatever it is, however many there are.
That one of yours. That's okay. I'll say I'll get it.
Are we certain, Madam President, are we certain that manager Carnival only has it a year from this April?
Yes.
It's a year?
He was elected
Two.
in 2011. He was not elected last year.
When are
He
you
did not
up?
run the same year Tony and I ran.
Okay,
He's with Mary.
Year and a half then.
He's with Mary.
okay, so
He's
that's
with
2.
Mary.
Him and Mary are together. Because he was here for nearly his first year and he hasn't been here for nearly a year.
About 6 months. He hasn't been here for about 6 months. The
Longer
last
than that.
meeting he came. June, May. Yeah, so. It's back in May.
Him and Mary used one together. And James and Tony were right.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve this ballot?
So moved.
On the question, Joe, did you see this, and Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. On the question, all in favor of approving the ballot? Opposed? Okay, ballot is approved. Is that it, Mary Ann? Okay. All right. Tony's going to talk a bit about the Open Public Records Act.
Okay, now am I starting with the request that you received? Is that what we're covering? Or,
We had to check, we got a
Because-
request for all of our emails,
yes,
which actually, as it turns out, is not valid. You have to be very specific in what you request. And just to say, I want all your emails is not specific enough, according to Oprah. But yeah, just go over what you found out.
all right. Now I have not seen this particular Oprah request, so I wasn't able to give the person I spoke with exactly what it was requesting, but from my understanding, it was a broad request for emails, which I was told by the state that we could either A, deny it based on the fact that it's too broad, or if it was to be appealed and it went to the state, most likely they would appeal it on the fact that it was too broad. But now the other question that the state had for me is, since apparently we're older than the state of New Jersey or certain legislation, they're not even certain that we're bound by the rules of Oprah. That's something we would have to discuss with the state further and get the attorney involved, because the person I spoke with at the state didn't seem too confident that we're bound by these rules because we're older than the rules. And I don't know about that part. That's something that the board
Wow.
can feel free to research. it was suggested to me to even just, you know, deny a request and, you know, encourage it to be appealed just so that they could try to find out if they even have grounds to allow anybody to file an Oprah with us. Well, this is what I was told. They're not certain that we have to follow that. I don't know if we are or we aren't.
They would certainly find us if they found us guilty.
If,
You know what I mean?
well, yeah, and that's true, but in order to find us guilty, they would have to determine if we're bound to follow their rules, which we don't know. But this particular Oprah, they said, we can deny on the fact that it's too broad, and if it went to the state, it would be denied on the basis that it's too broad.
They want
It has to be a specific date in reference to,
A specific item.
yes. Now, if there's more than one, I'm not entirely sure on this either, but I believe you'd need, because you can only fit so much on one Oprah form, you may need multiple Oprahs if you're seeking multiple emails. And now, that can even get a little hokey because, you know, say for example, Murray sends me the board an email. Now, I hit reply, but I only reply to him. Now, Manager Caruso, when you reply to him, but you reply all. You guys might not know that I sent him a reply back, so, I mean, you'd have to be really specific when requesting that information, because there's multiple branches from which once the email starts, it's getting passed around like wildfire. Not everybody's replying all, not everybody's replying to the same person, so there's multiple versions of one email floating out there. So, I mean, how do you know which one the person is requesting to, which is also where it gets a little tangled. Because I've seen emails spin into 20, 30 replies within 2 days on this board. I've seen them get really thrown back and forth, and unless you know which version you're looking for.
Maybe we shouldn't do business very.
Because the only one, honestly, that's going to know is the one that gets who sent the email that everybody's replying to.
Yeah.
So, if not everybody else was copied back on the comments, say for example, like right now I'm the secretary, I may not know that there's other responses pertaining to one particular email because I might not have been CC'd on that. Because the person replying may decide to keep it personal to the sender. So I may never be copied and never see that and never put that in the record.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have an email account for the board.
No.
We've been doing this via all these years, since way before I was on the board, through personal email accounts. Now, I have, just routinely deleted emails as I figure we're finished with them, and other people have too. And there have been, now did you tell me, this guy also said that if we're going to conduct,
Business
any
by
kind,
any
by
type
kind
of
of
communication
email.
by email, it has to be put into, I guess, like a folder or binder, like any other correspondence. It has to be treated as correspondence. Now, once again, the problem with that is there's multiple branches of the same email being replied to at any given time.
Okay, so any emails that the board passes back and forth among them are open to review by the public.
Yes.
Okay. So we can't declare that a certain email is confidential and you can't give it out, because once it goes out to the board, anybody can see it.
It's a correspondence. It's treated
Yeah.
like a letter we would get in the mail. It's correspondence, and that goes for all of us. But like I said, once again, the problem is who's going to be responsible for making sure all responses and all replies to each individual email are being logged as this correspondence, because if you send all of us an email and I decide, there's something I just want to say to you and I don't want everybody else to see it, and I say it to you and then we're going back and forth, nobody else knows that exists. which means that at that point, one of us has to be responsible for printing out that correspondence. And if we're not, and someone out there in the public, which I'm not trying to offend anybody, but let's face it, it's happened a lot in the past year, someone else catches wind of it, requests it, if it's not in that correspondence, the board can be fined, and the board will be held responsible. So this becomes a matter of who's going to be responsible for making sure they're having all the emails and each individual reply to each email, and it's...
There's no way to police
No,
it.
there is.
There isn't, and that's where it's becoming an issue. That's where it's going to be a major issue, since a lot of emails have been shared with people, and people have gotten knowledge of emails, and I don't know what those emails contained. I don't know how many different replies and responses were on those emails, and there's no way that as a secretary I'd ever be able to get each one and keep them into a correspondence. So
Why don't you, give me this, do you have the name of the person that you spoke with?
I wrote it down. This was, oh gosh, back at the
Well,
beginning of
all
the
right.
semester. I don't recall off the top of my head. I don't know if I still have it written down.
All right,
But-
I'll make some phone calls and see what office it's out of, and I'll see if I can talk to somebody, a supervisor, someone. There might be a DAG out there that specializes in this kind
Well,
of
I can tell you this
Because
much.
I think we need some more information.
Well, I can tell you this much. Even if I reply to an email with the letter G, it's correspondence. And it doesn't matter if one of us sees it or all of us sees it. It's correspondence, and it has to go into a book. And if somebody out there knows about an email that 5 of us don't know about, it doesn't matter. It's correspondence, and we're responsible for it. So, in the meantime, I would suggest, now I've already been doing this, but I've been having issues with my internet as well as my email account, so I'm taking steps to block all board activity until I can get my internet issues resolved. But I would suggest, really watch what you send until we figure out who's going to be responsible for turning in their emails and their replies and whatnot, because this could end up costing the board a lot of money, because I'm willing to bet that nobody has saved all their emails or all their replies.
I can tell you, I don't, I delete them.
I mean, I could ask each one of you, and I'm willing to bet that not everybody has, so there's probably a lot of emails out there that are just gone, that if someone requests from us, we could get fined for it. Because nobody ever thought to save them before. This is something new to me.
So at the end of the day, what's the suggestion?
The suggestion, like I just said, watch what you send until we know more information, because
Yeah, we have to
every
get-
email is a
we have to
potential
get more
fine if it's
information.
not logged properly.
We've only been
Well,
questioning.
isn't it, if I may, Madam President, isn't it perhaps a fast fix if we establish an email address? You go on our webpage, if someone wants to contact us, I believe there's a link on the webpage to contact us.
No, that's not what we're talking,
So, no, that's part of
Go ahead.
it. What I'm saying, as an example, you have this link, so just change all the communications to say, should you need to communicate to the Island Board.
No,
No, it's
Here's our-
between the.
it's between
we're talking about
us.
between each other.
Interboard communications, we're not
Yeah.
talking about the public, the emails we send
Interboard.
each other.
So, the fact that mine are more confidential doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything.
Only in America.
Has no bearing whatsoever. As far as they're concerned, if this board is bound by the rules and regulations of Oprah, you are a public official. Anything you send
Even though it's your own computer.
with board
Yeah.
information in it is an email that has to go in correspondence in a file. If you've noticed, I haven't really been sending any emails. And actually, about a week ago, I've had to take steps to start blocking emails because I'm having an issue with my account as well as my internet. I'm hoping to have that resolved. I was told by next Wednesday, but that may or may not be the case. But until then, I can't receive emails from all of you. I can't send you emails because I'm having an issue with my email and internet. And once I switch to a new one, I'm probably still not going to send any until we know the proper steps to take to protect this board.
So basically, just everybody in this board be aware.
Agenda,
Just be aware, just be aware.
And if you plan on sending an email, if this point, plan on printing it out and bringing it to the next meeting. And if you receive a reply, plan on printing that out and bringing that as well. Because everything you send, it has to be logged. There has to be a hard copy kept by the board secretary.
What were you gonna say, Jim?
I could be responsible for this because as president, I fostered the use of email for rapid communications, to keep the board members appraised of what's going on, new developments. Ron cautioned us not to make any decisions via email and the like. And this is just another example where government is squarely in the way of business trying to get something accomplished. I have a ton of Board of Island Managers email over the years. I didn't keep everything. I've kept some things, but according to what Manager Crusoe indicated, that all that stuff could be part of the public domain since I'm a public servant here. At any rate, I still think that email correspondence is necessary and proper and good for performing the tasks necessary by the board in a timely manner. And we should just watch what we send over email, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions. Thank you.
And if I may, I've got all my emails. I have nothing to hide. There's been conversations and emails that are kind of bitter going back and forth, but I don't care. You want to read them? You can read them. I haven't done anything illegal. I haven't said anything illegal. So if you want information that I put out there, you're more than welcome to have it. You want people who responded to me, you can have it. This whole thing just seems to be a little blown out of proportion. I think we've been requested by Oprah 3 times. One from somebody I think came up on our website, and then from an individual who's sitting in this room once or twice, maybe 3 times, has requested Oprah. Other than that, I don't know what the big deal is.
Well, if I may again, and Jim, this isn't just a watch what you say issue. This is how are we going to keep a log of every single email and reply. That is why I'm cautioning, think twice before you send, and not just watch what you send, but we need to figure out before we keep sending a million emails back and forth, who's going to be responsible for printing them out. I mean, it's easy to say the secretary, but at the same time, if I'm not CC'd on something or I don't know something exists, I can't print it. And also, you have to think about the expenses you're going to put on one individual. And, I mean, we need to discuss this before we just make a
Madam President.
rapid decision on it.
Email is used in every company that I've ever been associated with. It's been used on the board. I had a 30-year career with Ford Motor Company. We did not print emails and put them in a book somewhere.
If you weren't a public official.
You went in with that or something.
But see, any company you've worked for, Jim, as with myself, they all had their own email accounts for the company. So it was easy for an IT person to research emails. So there was no need for people to keep copies of their own emails because it could, IT could go through and get whatever they needed.
At any time.
So
whether
this
you
is,
believe
so
it or
this
not.
is the difficulty. We're dealing with 6 or 7 private email accounts. So, this to be continued.
Maybe if I could make a suggestion, Madam President.
Yeah.
It would probably be easier if we all had, not me, any member of the board had correspondence between each other. You can create your own email address that's strictly a Board of Island Manager address that can be kept separate from your personal accounts to satisfy the government requirements where Board of Island Manager business is discussed between managers via email.
Don't you do that anyway?
No, I use my personal.
I use
I know,
my
but don't you
personal
create a special
Yeah.
folder that says Island Business?
Yes, I do, but what I'm saying is,
That's where it's all-
have our own, like, Board of Island Manager Jim, Nick has it. Board of
Yeah,
Island
Nick has
Manager
it,
Jim.
yeah.
Maybe we should do something like that, or have such and such manager at boardofislandmanagers.com,
Yeah.
you know?
You still have to have a first copy with the keeper of the record.
Okay.
We're beating this.
We'll continue this, we'll continue this. Do we have to